This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today is an encore episode of an interview with David Schomer of Espresso Vivace. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I am your host for the show. I'm really happy to have you along, truly, especially if you're just finding the show for the first time. There's an entire library and world of content for you to explore. One of the best things you can do is subscribe to the show. You'll always be updated with new content, and on your podcast player, you can search the topics of episodes of the past 6 years of Keys to the Shop. And you could do that on the website too. If you go to keystotheshop.com and search there, you can find what you need. Some people have opted to go from the very beginning up until most recent. And I'd say if you have that much time on your hands, then God bless you. That's quite a feat. So in any case, subscribing to the show is awesome. Also, sharing these episodes as far and wide as you can, sharing the show, that really helps. And if you love what Keys to the Shop does, please leave a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts as well as over on Spotify. So thank you very much, everybody. Now, I gotta let you know that Keys to the Shop, on top of doing this podcast, also offers one-on-one coaching and consulting for people who are just starting their first coffee shop, or if you already operate a coffee shop or many shops, but you're looking to solve some issues, get some clarity, take things to the next level with your operations, people, and quality, and just thrive as an operator and find joy in the process of owning and running a coffee bar, then this is a great option for you. There's a lot of ways we can work together, and I'd love to have a conversation about that. All you need to do is email chris@keystotheshop.com, and we can set up a free discovery call and talk all about what is going on with your business, in your operations, and how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Again, that email for Keys to the Shop coaching and consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, as long as I've been in coffee, one of the best things that I could ever hope for is consistent quality, consistent great coffee. And it's easier than ever to find that. And part of the reason why it's easy to find that is because machines have gotten better. People have invented machines that are more likely to give you the kind of consistency that your customers really want and you hope for. And one of these companies is Ground Control. The Ground Control Cyclops Brewer comes from the folks over at Voga Coffee. And the Ground Control Brewer is an award-winning brewer. SCA award-winning technology gives you an incredible amount of control over a depth and range of flavors in your coffee that traditional batch brewing just cannot give you. And that result is just mind-blowing quality and consistency. Not only that, but the extraction technology allows you to make batch diced lattes, batch cold brew, even tea. So this opens up a lot of avenues for profitability and efficiency also on your bar. You should check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee to learn more about this wonderful machine and the company. They have just innovated yet again their Ground Control brewer to a lower profile, lower price point, just the same quality as you would expect. And I'm just really a big fan of their work. So again, check them out over at groundcontrol.coffee. When you know a company cares about you as the user of the product, it's easy to be a big fan of what they do, especially when you're included in the creation of that product. And that's why baristas love using the Barista Series from Pacific. The Barista Series from Pacific is a line of plant-based performance beverages that's created for baristas, tested by baristas, and that's why it is preferred. That's why it is the global leader in plant-based beverages, because it is consistent, it is quality, it stands up to the heat from steaming, it produces great texture for latte art, and most importantly, it really balanced so that the emphasis is always on the coffee in the cup. Go check them out at pacificfoodservice.com to get samples in your store and just try it for yourself. See how it really does perform on bar and what it tastes like. I think you'll truly be impressed. If you're looking for the best plant-based beverages to serve your customers and to delight your baristas, then I think you need to be using the Barista Series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today we are going to be releasing a episode that was aired quite a bit ago. This was episode 81 back in the early part of 2019, where I got to sit down with one of my coffee heroes, David Schomer, founder of Espresso Vivace in Seattle, Washington. Not just my coffee hero, but so many of us who came up in those years. I'd say the 90s, the early 2000s, we were really getting into specialty coffee, and what was the bleeding edge of what was possible with espresso. That was coming from David Schomer. I've owned his VHS tapes, his book on espresso techniques, professional espresso techniques. David is essentially the godfather and groundbreaking innovator for espresso quality and specialty coffee. Espresso Vivace was founded in 1988, and it has not only been a cafe serving Seattle wonderful coffee, but is a laboratory of sorts, a groundbreaking and paradigm-shifting laboratory that experimented with what can be done with machine and coffee together. His work has been foundational and formative in countless professionals' lives around the world. And so I'm really excited to have gotten to interview him back in 2019. The reason why I am putting this out right now is that I've learned that the Sidewalk Cafe that's been in operation, I believe, for 35 years is now closing. In fact, we weren't even going to do this episode today. It was going to be kind of a curated Founder Friday episode for this month of April. But when I heard about what was happening and that one of the most iconic coffee bars, one of the locations in Seattle, the Walk-Up Sidewalk Bar, was closing, I thought this is a great time to, re-release this episode for those of you who have not gone back and listened to it, and put it up there in your inbox, in your mind, so to speak, so that you can hear the story of Espresso Vivace. And truly, I think it's important that we are aware of the history of those who have done so much great work before us to bring us where we are today. Without further ado, let's get right to it. Here now is an Encore episode with my conversation from February of 2019 with David Schomer of Espresso Vivace. David Schomer, such an honor to have you on the show. Welcome to Keys to the Shop.
Well, thank you. The honor is mine. Thank you, Chris.
This is kind of, we were talking a little bit before we started the interview today. For me, at least, this is full circle because I was a little pipsqueak coffee nerd trying to, think about opening my own shop back in like 2001. And I interviewed you via cassette tape in your cafe. I was on like some pilgrimage to Seattle. So this is really interesting that we're back and trying to talk about, wisdom from your experience of 30 years now of Espresso Vivace. This is going to be great, and congratulations.
Oh, thanks a lot. It's really a sense of community and of time gone by. I've got a couple of staff now that when I met them, they weighed 8 pounds. No kidding, man.
Wow. So not many people would leave the career that you had back in the day when you were a scientist and had a successful career in metrology. I wonder what inspired you back in 1988 to open Espresso Vivace and leave that career behind to pursue coffee.
Well, there was an interim period. I was working at Boeing Metrology Class A Standards Lab, which is the top of the heap for measurement science. But I was commuting by car, and I was in a fluorescent lit lab, and I just felt like life had to offer more. So I went and did a full-time study of classical flute and did a brave effort to become a professional flutist. And I realized I was going to play for a wall of backs with martini glasses for $8,000 a year, and I also wanted to raise a family. So I said, well, none of that's going to really work out. I just had to leave Boeing because it was just a little too dry for me, and the lab was not a healthy environment for the organism, the human organism. So I just went searching, sort of, and the flute period lasted a good long time, and I got into coffee just because I could afford to open a cart on Broadway. I had no idea that it would capture my imagination quite like it has.
So you were a fan of coffee, just consuming it, and you decided to make a go of it just to be more in touch with the human element?
Yes, and be able to have a business of my own. I've always thought that I should probably do my own thing. I also briefly was a mathematics major and realized I was studying to be someone else's pencil. And so I wanted to be the guy behind the pencil the whole time. I think a lot of people do, but with the right partners and gathering the right people, I've been able to succeed at running the company and creating the beautiful coffee we do. But it was just a fluke. I had no idea that espresso was so beautiful and fascinating.
Was it soon after you opened your cart that you found that to be true, that it captured your imagination?
It did. There was a gentleman introduced to me. One of my suppliers was giving me Ely Cafe at the time. And he introduced Eric Stone as, oh, well, Eric, was a real expert on coffee. And that appealed to my imagination, that somehow that this was sort of sorcery. This was sort of intriguing and beautiful to people, especially if you could be good at it. So shortly thereafter, I went to Italy and absorbed the techniques and the style of particularly northern Italy. It had a great influence from Trieste, of course. Sergio Michael at Ely Cafe gave me many fundamental principles which took years to unfold in my mind and become practical guidelines to improve this. But it was the mystique of it. It was always been a mystique in my mind, and I just really like that, and it's beautiful.
So in that time, what is it that your goal was? Was it just mysterious? Like you said, there's a mystique to it, or did you have in mind something specific that you were pursuing?
Well, I was pursuing to establish a business so that it would so it would run and I could get back to music. And of course, if you're in small business, it is full time. So as it captured my imagination, it absorbed all my time. I still play the flute. With my son, who's the real musician, Taylor. We do once a year a special winter garden performance of flute and guitar, or flute and piano. But truly, I have found my calling. The art of espresso is I'm better at it than I am at music.
Well, it seems, looking back, that your strengths in science and in art kind of come together quite nicely for coffee. It seems like a good marriage of the two.
Yes, it is. It is an art, but it has to be guided by rigorous, empirical, scientific methodology. You can't be sloppy or lazy or imprecise, but yet the beauty of the coffee has to be your motivator. So yeah, it's a perfect combination for myself.
And that was a not common thought back in 1988 when you started, and in subsequent years even. The exact science and measurement, maybe it was a thought, but it wasn't actually practiced as well as it is today. We have much better equipment and there's been so much progress made. But you were kind of championing a scientific process for espresso that really catapulted you into the forefront of espresso and coffee. I mean, I remember your book it was basically like the coffee Bible to me when I first got into coffee. And I think it's the nature of that scientific approach that really drew me into it, but also just the passion behind it. Did you find people reacting that way as a validation of your kind of take on what coffee should be and how we can make it better?
Well, for me, I've always been a person that's very interested in making people happy. I'm the youngest child. I don't think it's an unusual psychology. And I just thrill when I give somebody coffee and I see that oh, God, that is so good, dude. How do you do that? And I never would presume upon my customer or anybody that appreciates to ever tell them the mountain of research and trial and error, with a heavy emphasis on error, that's behind all this. I never, ever do that, but I just thrill to make customers happy and to make people happy with my coffee. I just love that. It's in my nature. So I think, though, that it was just an accident that the metrology taught me a way to disassemble a process and to control each factor affecting that process. And I don't know if you remember my early articles. They are always based on each factor being explored and improved, and then write about that for people to be able to improve their own coffee. But it was really years later that I looked back and I said, oh, well, the metrology, the science of measurement had prepared me to dissect this into each factor and to try to make each factor better. And as you know, I ran square into temperature in the early 90s, a barrier I could not get past. And so I was really on the stump writing a bunch of stuff and, said a $49 Mr. Coffee has better temperature stability than these machines. And it was Sergio Michael at Ely that told me that. He said, David, of course, each brewing water temperature gives you a different flavor profile. And I kind of stored that away. And then later on and that was 1989, and when my experiments started to show these coffee machines were wildly inaccurate, I began to really push the industry and work with Marzocco to develop the prototypes. You know the story, but it was kind of an accident. I look back up and I said, oh, of course, you were applying metrology principles to the coffee, but I didn't really know it at the time. I was just doing what I thought anybody would do. If you want a tamp, you got to get the perfect tamp, or if you want to grind coffee, you got to have the perfect grinder and grind by the cup, on and on and on. So it was dissecting it later that I realized the metrology had prepared me perfectly to try to perfect espresso.
So when you're pursuing espresso and the science of extraction, you're doing that usually in a context that is also brewing coffee in different ways, like brewed coffee. Now, that's something that you never have done in terms of your operations. You haven't focused on the brewed coffee. It's been pursuing espresso. Was that just a matter of, I don't have time to think about anything else except for trying to chase this espresso? What was behind that decision?
What was behind it was that's all I liked. I don't like saturation coffee. Never have. Don't like French press. Don't like drip. I like the cold brew. I like to travel with it. We do make cold brew, but it was simply a matter of me being like a little spoiled child and only just doing exactly what I'm interested in, and the heck with the rest. Mm.
And so you eventually, in order to get more control over the espresso, you had to start roasting. When did roasting enter the picture?
1991, 2 years after I started. Yeah, I got so far with the roasts that were being provided by Mauro Cipolla, an excellent roaster, and I realized, this is the next thing. And I didn't realize that, factors trying to control espresso and develop the machines along with the machine industry, all this would bring me all the way back to where now my primary interest is roasting again. I'm having so much fun right now.
What is your approach in roasting, and what are you looking for in espresso, and how does it affect what you roast? What does that process look like for you?
Well, it looks like trying beans from all around the world from several brokers. I don't do a lot of traveling. Again, I'm a little hothouse flower, but what I'm trying to do is to find coffees where the origin flavors peak along with caramelized sugar without a shred of citric acid in the flavor profile. And then I fine-tune it by tasting that coffee until I can identify to within a half a degree and 30 seconds roasting time, airflow, and everything, to where I can pinpoint the maximum caramelized sugar that coffee has to offer. So that was the style I learned touring northern Italy, was maximum caramelized sugar, developed alongside of the origin flavors. For example, Ethiopian, you want that chocolate umami, I call it, with a blueberry finish if you've got a really good one. So it's always been about heavy body, sweetness, and distinct origin flavors for me, without a shred of citric acid.
That sounds delicious.
Oh, it is delicious. You know my coffee. You've been. I was hoping you were going to come to Seattle. I can't imagine that you would, just to see me. But if you are in town for the show, you got to come by for these single origins.
I wish I could get out there. I had the fortunate pleasure of stepping behind your machine once. I think it's a couple of years ago, and watching a pull shot. That was pretty awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah. But it makes me want to ask, the chocolate umami, the blueberry, when you're looking at the way espresso is now, it's not chocolate umami. It's what is it? It's bright. By and large, espresso today is extraordinarily bright. What do you What are your thoughts on the way espresso is now?
I'm deeply embarrassed for these roasters, and my heart is a little bit broken. They have taken these beautiful techniques, and somebody said, coffee is a fruit. It should taste like a fruit, which is a concept. It's a concept that's factually wrong. Coffee is a legume, a consumable seed of the coffee cherry. But not only that, conceptual art, for example, an artist that would like you, that paints, for example, some genius that would like you to feel that you have a beautiful life and you should cherish that life. They want to shock you with visual art as a concept to get you to a higher plane of existence through their art. And that's quite legitimate, because if you're looking at a painting and the painter has used deliberately jarring or violent images or old materials as a way to communicate a higher understanding, that's quite legitimate, and Western culture finds that is very legitimate. But culinary art, oh no. Culinary art is visceral and intimate and in your mouth. You do not color outside the lines. A Parisian chef would never use a deliberately bitter thing to remind Parisians that they have a beautiful life. No, it's out of bounds because it's visceral. It's powerful. It's in your mouth. So I'm embarrassed and heartbroken that these roasters are following a conceptual art that coffee is a fruit. It should taste like a fruit. I can't emphasize enough how disgusted I am with all of that.
Wow. Your pursuit for this particular flavor profile, and you're intimately acquainted with what it takes to achieve it. It does seem that some of it is making a resurgence. More of the industry is embracing the deeper tones, the more coffee flavors, if you will, and so hey, there might be hope yet.
Yeah, I should clarify that when they do roast deliberately light before second crack, it is dominated by citric acid. When you put it in an espresso machine, it's horribly sour, and I think that that's important to understand my rant. Otherwise, you're going to say, "Well, this dude is just closed-minded." No, it's just way sour. That's important to understand.
So the art aspect of coffee is really, it's not just what you see, it's what you experience. Part of what you are credited with popularizing, it kind of exploded from your shop is latte art. And the visual element, the whole eat with your eyes first mantra, that, I mean, is one of the main things that got me into coffee besides the flavor, and it's an entry point for a lot of people. So it's just amazing to see that. What was it like to be in the beginning of that whole phase of specialty coffee? What kind of reactions did people get when they first saw latte art in Seattle?
Oh, they would say, like Charles Kuralt came, rest in peace, but he came for his show. He said, "Oh my God, that's too beautiful to drink." I said, "Charles, we'll make you another one tomorrow." So I could not be more proud and gratified and happy the way that the world and baristas all over the U.S. have created this latte art, because they've gone beyond what I can do, and they're marvelous artists. I do not do scribe art. I only do Freeport, but I'm incredibly proud of them, and truly, if it's a finish. And any culinary art should have a finish. Certainly the chef works to make the plate look really beautiful. The sushi chef is very interested in the arrangement, the materials used to present the beautiful fish. And so this is our finish, and it serves notice to the customer that, well, yeah, there's something going on here that is special, and it makes them step back a moment and to cherish what they're about to drink. And so, and this is the opposite of what the roasters have done, in my opinion. I'm extremely gratified and happy to have been the person that popularized this, because you had it right. I read your blog or listened to your blog or podcast on latte art, and I didn't invent this. it was something that we've refined incredibly and popularized to the world with the videos. But when I was working the cart at Fifth and Union, the banker named Sid, and you never think of a banker as something except a suit, So the guy comes out one day and he's like, "Oh, look at that." He said, "I have not seen that." We were pouring Rosetta at that time, 93. And he said, "That was in the hills of northern Italy where I grew up. The barista poured those. He called it a Rosetta." And I said, "Sid, you've just given me some major information. So, yeah, you had it right on your latte art podcast. I didn't invent this, but I'm incredibly proud to have popularized it, and we continue to develop it on the website, espressovivace.com. We have our gallery, which people contribute every day that are on staff, and they all just pour beautifully. My favorite latte artist now is a judge that was at one of the shows. I think it was Nashville when I was judging before Dave sold Coffee Fest. I did a couple of judging in Schroeder Say, Hsiea.
Right.
Oh my God, so good. He was so sweet and soft and just judging, and then Sunday morning I caught him on the machine. I said, "Do you mind if I take a video?" I show that all the time. Today I was training Carrie, and I showed her again this beautiful pour. So I hope I haven't gone on too long, but I could not be more proud and excited the way that latte art has been embraced by baristas all over the world.
Yeah, it is a movement for sure. And
it's great.
Yeah. Shout out to Schroeder too. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
So the visual element of latte art being, one of the things, the whole "I don't want to drink it, it's too beautiful," that lives on today. Everyone has not been introduced. It's amazing that people still have not been introduced to latte art as much as we do it in the shops, and it's now on, non-dairy creamer containers.
Yeah, it's all over the place, man. It's gone mainstream.
Can't stop a good thing. So that visual element mixed with that, the temperature stability, the exact science, the pursuit of an exact espresso in your shop. When you did that, let's talk about the taste element. Customers' reaction to your mechanical and scientific pursuits, like integrating PID into the commercial equipment, and belt-driven grinders in your shops and things like that. What was the customer reaction in terms of the taste and what they saw happening to make that taste possible?
Well, I do believe that the back bar work to develop the equipment to where you could capture that fragrance in a cup. That is my life work, to capture the roasted fragrance in a cup, to preserve it into a cup. Piero Bambi told me that quote years and years ago from La Marzocco. But of course, it's all customer focused. One is visual, which people respond to instantly, but the other is flavor, because these innovations do give you much more rich quote of the fragrance into the cup, and that is make the customer that is sensitive to flavors just as happy as the visual.
So when you're combining all of these elements in your stores, these repeatable pieces of art, the experience of coffee, the visuals, the taste, what is it exactly? Encapsulate for us the experience that you want a customer to have when they come into your cafe and remember it after they've left.
I really want them to go, "Oh my God, that is so good. How do you do that?" And of course, we will talk a little bit about it, but we just basically say, we train all the time, and there's quite a history to this. You can go on the website, read the article history and archives. But for us, again, it's all about that customer's experience. It's not about us at all. It's about what they perceive. And so my most gratifying is just that jaw-dropping moment. "Oh my God, that is so good." And that happens to us every single day. And what I find is really cool, Chris, is that when you do have something that people really like, you find out that the people that are in the shop are the ones that will go out of their way a little bit for a flavor experience. And we find that those are fascinating people that treat the barista really well, that are respectful and good tippers. So the experience of making something better also attracts really interesting, great customers, which since it's 30 years on, I'm really glad of, because you don't want folks in there that are running down our staff or Groupon herds that are looking for cheap coffee or something like that. You want the appreciation, because, I'm asking these people to do art, and I'm demanding that they care in their heart. So if they push that cup across and they get that feeling from the customer, or that exclamation, "Oh my God, that is so good. How did you do that?" Or I can't imagine, any more satisfaction for the artist. And I think artists need that feedback. So it's a loop. It's a feedback loop. You make the customer happy, and better people are coming in that appreciate the staff, and then the staff is more motivated to do the art. It's a big continuum between customer appreciation and what the staff can do. And I learned that the hard way at Fifth and Union. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. Tell me more about that. What's behind that?
I opened the cart at Fifth and Union, and it was greed and ego. The reason I opened it. We did a foot count, 14,000 a day walking by the corner and all this stuff. And I put out my cart and put out my energy in 1989. And people would come in one day, "Oh, that's really good." And the next day I'd see them with a Stewart Brothers was across the street, Starbucks, and there was just no way to get any traction down there. The people that were there just didn't really, there was not enough of them that cared about quality in that financial district. Fifth and Union is a financial district in Seattle. So by locating in the neighborhood of Capitol Hill, what I found out was that because it's a residential community with people all around, generally highly educated, progressive people in midlife and older that have traveled, that their appreciation is very, very high, and that's what really makes the staff culture that I've created able to survive. They're appreciated.
So that staff culture, meaning what you just described, like a satisfied artist producing something that really changes somebody's perspective of coffee.
Right, and they're all excited. They're all comparing their latte art on their phones. They're all like packing in to taste single origin on Sunday. We have single origin Sundays now at the big bars, and there's real excitement. But it wouldn't exist if there wasn't excitement from the customers. That's a key point.
And that is one of the conversations we have in specialty coffee all the time, is how do you get a customer to care? And you said it earlier, and I thought it was really good. And I agree that even though you have done, you especially have done so much work behind the scenes to make this one fleeting, ounce shot of espresso, you're not begging people to validate that work by anything other than what you deliver in the cup. And I think that's unique.
I never thought of that as being unique. I just thought that was kind of the way it should be. It's just nobody cares about the work you've done unless they do, and then they can find it. What they care about is how they're treated. The location, you can't get past that, but and then how that coffee is in the cup. And we just, you asked me in those written questions, what do you think is the secret to longevity? And I think it is that we value the customer's appreciation of what we do and our art equally. We make a great effort for the shop to be soothing and relaxing and a sanctuary for the senses, so that they can relax just a little bit. Flavor is very sophisticated. When you taste something, it's perhaps the most sophisticated sensory experience between the human and the environment of the world. There's really not sure how it goes on, but having them relaxed is important. For example, every time somebody tells you the best cup of coffee they ever had, Chris, it's always a story of romance. It's always a story. Well, I was on the Adriatic, and it was with Billy, before the incident. and the waiter was perfect, and the sun was going down. It was the best coffee, and that's quite legitimate. The human organism, when it tastes something, everything is involved. Your mood, how much you slept, the present company, what you're hearing. It's I favor Luca Turin, the emperor of scent, his theory on how we perceive flavor and aroma, but I won't go too far in the theory of it. But it's amazingly sophisticated. So we're trying to make sure the customers relax. And that's one thing about latte art, is that when you pour it, they're ready to experience something special. They're like, oh, well, okay. And it relaxes them a little bit and allows them to taste it better.
Yeah, it makes them smile. I, got off a bar shift here just before our interview, and at least 4 or 5 people that have never seen latte art before, and even the people that have before, always get a kick out of it, and it sets them up for something nice.
Yeah.
So your operations run on the interaction between staff and the customer, as all of ours do. Getting the right staff is a huge question, and I love to ask people who have opened coffee bars about this, because it is such a vital cornerstone of any organization. So how do you go about finding the right people to represent what you want to accomplish in your stores?
Well, it's word of mouth. The baristas are out there, they're talking to each other, and we have a reputation for being very serious about this. No one's late. But they're very well supported at Vivace, and the people know it. And we have this reputation for doing excellence. So we're kind of lucky that people that are looking to learn this art, that are usually quite fascinating young people, they're applying for us, but to work with us because of our reputation, which took a while to establish. At first, I hired friends from Cornish, and then I immediately had less friends. But it must be said that a person like me, an artist that is sort of perhaps a little bit immature and a little bit unwilling to do things I really don't like to do, they need a business partner that can control inventory, taxation, with really good management structure. I'm a natural people manager, but I'm not a natural business administrator. So I can't emphasize enough that to have a good place to work, you've got to have a very tight back of the house as well as a beautiful product out front.
Yeah. So your staff, they buy into what you do because they know about what you do through word of mouth. When you're looking at baristas at large in the industry, what do you think the ideal barista, and I know this is preference of the, expression of coffee in the shop, but are there qualities that you think are just core to being a great barista?
Oh, yeah. You must have an easy breezy confidence with people. You cannot be a sort of introverted wallflower. It just doesn't work, no matter how intelligent or sensitive you are underneath. But at the same time, I look for artistry, some kind of interest, music, painting, something that they do on the side that's artistic. Foodies are great. And then for background, we prefer anybody that's done bartending. Makes tremendous segue into that chaotic environment. So it's really been those combinations of a very confident with people, some artistry, and a background that includes some kind of a high volume, chaotic customer service, hard work environment.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They are confident, and they have an inner anchor, so to speak.
They have to thrill to beauty. If they don't appreciate beauty, they don't really last. I mean, some of them can fake it really, really well, and that'll work for me if they can fake it. But usually the ones that are the best, it's genuinely in their heart. They just love it.
Hearing all of this, all the work you've put into doing, groundbreaking work in espresso and having a specific artistic expression through coffee, one would think that after 30 years, you would have dozens of stores. And that's not the case. I believe you have 3 now, right?
3 is what I've had since 1992, is it? 92, I think. Yeah, well, forever. 3 stores. That's it.
What is the thought process behind that decision to not expand?
It's because I'm in each shop every day personally, and also I do the training personally alongside a couple of trainers that I've developed, 15 years experience, but with these individual trainers. But it's the personal touch. So if I open too many stores to serving coffee, it would never be to my standard. And again, Chris, I'm kind of a person that I thrill as much to the beauty of this art as I do to be making a good living in my own business. I just can't look at bad coffee. So if I expand, and I've had lots of chances, lots of financiers, Yamamoto Shipping from Japan had a big plan to put me all over the place. And as soon as I told them, well, you have to have a roasting plant. If you want to go into Hong Kong, the roasting plant has to be very close by. It will not ship this stuff. It will not work. It will be stale. Mm-hmm. They all dry up. So it's my insistence on perfection that prevents me from expanding. But again, it's not like a great quality that I'm trying to affect. It's just in my nature. Small business is so tough. It's like a rock tumbler. And so you either get polished to your perfect self or you break up and become the grit that polishes something else. So I like to, I used to think, well, it's so great that I do these things. Well, it's just my nature. I don't really have a choice. I have to make perfect coffee, so I can't expand.
You're a slave to the art.
Yeah, I absolutely am, and I love that. It's quite gratifying. But without my business partners and structure behind me, I would be one store that was always out of napkins or something.
So when you're roasting, you're wholesaling to people too, though, right?
A few.
Mm-hmm. So how do you support them in terms of training to represent what you're roasting well?
I offer them, of course, the books and videos. I offer them time with me on the machine before they make the coffee. But I also insist upon the equipment. If they don't have good PID-controlled machines, I know that this Northern Italian roast will come out sour, astringent half the time. So I encourage them to get another roast that's slightly darker, like a roast from around Naples area in Japan, which is a little darker, which is a little more forgiving. But if you're going to do Northern Italian, you have to have it all lined up. I'm not that interested in wholesale. They disappoint me. And the ones that stick with me are the ones that are pretty good at it. But what I'm interested in my growth as a business is pouches through the mail, the retail through the website. That's why I've launched single origin coffees that I mentioned on our website. I've just rebuilt the website, which was a monster. I can't recommend it. It's really tough. But our growth is actually retail customers throughout the U.S., and that grows steadily. Tree ring growth, they call it. One of the business primers from Japan calls it natural tree ring growth. And I can do that. I can grow quite a bit in retail pouches through the web without having to compromise anything. So I'm growing there, and that's great because, wages are coming at us. I got to pay $15 by 2021, and you can only charge so much for a cappuccino,
That's true. Yeah, it's a tough one. So that growth, that sounds like a wise way of going about growing a business. I'm interested to know, over the course of these 30 years, how have you personally grown?
Well, pain is the only teacher, so I've gotten pretty wise about some things. But what I've really done, I think, is to embrace those that are different than me, that are essential to the organization. My business partner, Geneva, and we don't get along in a lot of ways, but she's essential, and so I've learned to respect the numbers. I have a great respect for the cost of goods sold. Oh my God, the deity, and I have a great respect for my managers. I give them more and more control over shop operations, personnel management, while I focus on coffee. So I think it's realizing that I'm not good at everything. I'm very good at this coffee, and sorry, but there it is. And so I must, as I mature, look around and say I have limitations. I think a little bit immature. I think I'm a little bit self-centered and self-absorbed about what I want, and that makes an artist, and that's who I am, for better or for worse. And so I respect those that assist me in creating this art with talents that I don't have.
How do you avoid having to learn through pain? was there a process in which you were mentored by anybody who steered you clear of any potential excess pain that you didn't necessarily have to go through?
Well, sure. I mean, everybody wants to avoid pain, but certainly from day one, we respected tax law. We call something like getting behind in your taxes, we call that a landmine. And you step on a landmine and you are no longer exist in business. So, sure, by learning business practices from others and stuff, we avoided some obvious pitfalls. There are certain things you can learn without having to go through the pain, because the pain of being shut down is the extreme. You've lost it. But what I'm referring to is when, people turn out to be not who you thought, or things go wrong, personal things with staff members or other people that you kind of love, and you see them suffering. But I don't need to dwell on it. You can learn a lot by studying basic business principles and adhering to them. Always pay your taxes, do the best job you can, respect cost of goods sold for the absolute hammer that it is.
I want to go back to the idea of delegation and giving more authority to your team. We were talking earlier, what is behind the longevity of your business? And I have to think that part of it is the wisdom to be able to give away authority in that respect. But people don't always do that. We want control of every aspect of the business. I mean, what are people risking when they don't relinquish their hold on things that they shouldn't really be holding on to?
Well, they'll burn out. If you're sitting there trying to control everything in a business with 50 employees and 3 stores and a wholesale roasting plant, you will burn out. So I think that by not delegating, you simply end up absolutely fried. Control freak cannot be a successful business person. You've got to have the ability to recognize talent and delegate to it.
I totally agree. So many of our listeners are, hopeful cafe owners or are currently cafe owners. If you could give them almost like a top 3 or a top few of piece of advice from your 3 decades of making coffee professionally, what would you say to them to focus on and to implement to be successful and fulfilled?
Well, it's location dependent. For example, if you are really good at writing lease proposals, you may get something like the SeaTac Airport handed to you, where success at the SeaTac Airport would require you to have a very fast-paced business. You would not have repeat customers. You couldn't build on quality. You would have to have a repeatable product that was consistent at a good price. You'd have to succeed in a really busy tourist environment. It's all about attractive signage, perfect service, high-speed volume. However, what I have found out is if you want to succeed with an artisan business, with something that you're trying to make something better that people thrill to, stay away from the high volume tourist place. As a matter of fact, what you want is a dense residential urban neighborhood where people that live there have time to discover you by word of mouth reputation. And then you can follow some of the principles we've been talking about today. You make continuously better cup, and you treat people beautifully, and they treat your staff beautifully, and it grows because of high quality, which brings in the high quality customer, in my opinion and my experience. But there's all kinds of different business environments, and those are just 2. So a high-paced tourist environment is absolutely not the place to try to do something gourmet. You'll never establish the reputation that you need to afford the cost of goods sold to be able to have repeat, steady clientele. So, and there's all kinds of business environments. That's just 2. So for artisan, dense residential neighborhood. For something that's a really booming tourist place, you've got to know exactly how to crack that. And that's going to be really fast-paced, cheerful service, cost of goods sold under 28%. You want really good, attractive marketing. You've got to stand out for people that are going to see you twice a year. They're not going to be able to come because you're high quality. They're there because it's a busy place.
Great advice. In terms of advice for owners who do have to manage a lot of things, and there's a lot at risk when you're opening a business, you're putting your livelihood on the line. So there's a lot of stress. What would you say is something good for them to do or practice in order for them to not burn out? Like, how should they view their responsibility, seeing as how it can be sometimes really overwhelming?
Well, you're talking about the boss then, and a couple things about being the boss is you're not invited to parties, you're not their friend, but there is love involved. You have these relationships where you're training and developing them, so you have to understand who you are when you're the boss and be a good, predictable, fair boss in order to establish any sort of business culture. That's sort of the ABCs. And after that, I'm not sure that I have any useful advice, because what we've done is so unique to exactly where we're located. But form a good team, trust them. If they're not good, you have to get them out. You have to have a sharp knife. If somebody's not on staff that's good, believe me, when you chop them off, the rest of the staff, when they have their beers, is going, thank God, David stepped up and got rid of that flake. So that's just in a nutshell a couple things that come off the top of my head about how to run a business. Excellent.
This has been really amazing, and I'm super honored that you take time to talk to us about your experiences. And I know there's 30 years of experiences, and this is only a little bit under an hour of a podcast. Where can people go to learn more if they don't know, and I don't know why you wouldn't know, but where can they go to find out more about Espresso Vivace and your work?
Well, the website's a great place to start because my article archives are on there, complete with mistakes and all. My blog, Schomer's blog, has the latest things that I'm working on. But really, advancing in espresso is tasting it. Tasting. And so come to Seattle. Come see me. Yay.
Thank you so much, David. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, and a good job. And thank you very much, Chris.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation. If you're in Seattle, you should definitely check out the Alley 24 coffee bar, the Bricks coffee bar. If you want to learn more about Espresso Vivace, definitely check out the website as well, espressovivace.com. And again, this is in honor of Espresso Vivace that we're releasing this episode, that their sidewalk coffee bar is closing, and that's a very historic location. That was the first location for Espresso Vivace, and that it is closing, and I'm not sure something else is going in that space. Maybe I think the building development is tragic, but again, I let this inspire us all to investigate the history of those who have gone before us and what has made us who we are as an industry. It can only enrich you as a professional and make you better. So grateful for the time with David Schomer. Thank you, David. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for me about today's episode or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, definitely go and email chris@keystotheshop.com. It's also where you can reach out if you're interested in coaching or consultation with me at Keys to the Shop Consulting, chris@keystotheshop.com. And with that, that is the end of today's episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time to join me. I truly appreciate you supporting the show. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to check Keys to the Shop out on Instagram as well, at Keys to the Shop. Follow there. You could always DM me as well on Instagram. And be sure to share these episodes with your team, with your friends, with your milkman, and definitely have a great day. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.